Now, I want to ask you, Mike, how do you deal with criticism? How do you deal with the criticism that comes from both sides? It's not only the Christians, but also the non-Christians are going to criticize, why are you looking for the gospel in such a show to have X, Y, and Z? And then from the other side, you're going to hear criticisms talking about leave this alone, ain't got nothing to do with the Bible, or going to say, hey, it's just fiction like the Bible. How do you deal with that?
Well, for the unbeliever, the person who's not a Christian, what I tend to do, with people like this is say, okay, here's what I need from you for you to win the argument, for me to join your side. I need you to show me how it's, this is all big picture thinking, how it's philosophically and intellectually coherent to argue that reality is best understood without a God than with one. So I want you to explain that. I want you to explain why people, and I know so many of these, but why people who have advanced degrees in the hard sciences and in philosophy, why they don't find your criticisms at all persuasive. In other words, how does that work? And what you usually get is, well, they're all like lying. They really have doubts, or they're just not as smart, or they're filtering stuff out. No, excuse me, but they went to the same schools, they publish in the same journals, they're members in the same academic societies, they're department heads and professors at the major PhD granting institutions in the world, and they just don't find this persuasive. And for you to say that, where's the empirical research that supports that they're deceived or lying? I'd like to see that. Again, that's challenging, but I try to give people homework, essentially. I do this at UFO conferences. I do this, where when I'm lecturing on Zeitgeist or something like that. I mean, I do it everywhere. Here's what I need from you for me to be persuaded to join you. So I don't want to dismiss their criticisms and concerns, but at the end of the day, I need answers. I need coherent answers to questions like these.
Mm-hmm.
So go work on that. Okay, we can have a conversation later. I want to know, just show me. That's not an unreasonable request. I want data. I don't want your anger. Your anger doesn't solve my problem. My problem is I want answers to these questions. I understand if you're angry. Chances are, I mean, I've told people who are atheists or whatever, if I had the caricature of God in my head that you have in yours, I'd already be
Yeah.
I'd already be on your side. But you've really misunderstood this or that point of theology, that you really do have a caricature living in your head. You've had personal pain and you're not correctly parsing why there's evil in the world. And you may have gotten an answer from a Christian that really hurts you and damages you. And you have every right to do that because it's not a good answer. So I agree with you. But you need to take a deep breath and say, well, maybe there's a different way to parse all this. And I'm telling you there is, but so if you want to have a conversation, I'd love to have that conversation with you. But if you want to win the argument on your side, here's what I need. For Christians, who, again, I get criticism for, oh, he's not in the Puritan tradition. He's not a Reformed Calvinist. He's not fill in the blank. Okay, you know what? Good for you. I'm not. And you know what? I don't care. My superpower is apathy. I don't care. I don't care what your view of eschatology is. I don't care what your view of creationism is. I don't care what your view of election is. Because, I've taught all this stuff and I know where you cheat. Okay? Everybody cheats. The other side, your opponents, cheat too. I'm not saying you're the only one that cheats. I know this. And all these things are presupposition driven. They're driven by assumptions. They're driven by hermeneutical, choices before you even get to the Bible. Okay? I know all this and I don't really care because I don't view them as damaging. I view them as limited, and I think it's wrong to filter the Bible through your system or any system. This is why, again, I want the Israelite living in your head and the first century Jew. So
Absolutely.
I will let some other ministry fight with Christians. I just don't. I don't care. I know I have a very clear sense of why I'm alive and what I'm supposed to do. Again, in God's providence, I think He's taught me this much. I know what I'm supposed to do. I know what I'm gifted at doing. I know how His providence has prepared me to do certain things. And so winning arguments with Christians over peripheral matters isn't on the list.
Absolutely.
So I am literally not going to waste my time. Go to
Hmm.
some other ministry or some other podcast or some other YouTube channel where you can fight, because I just
Absolutely.
don't care. I really don't. I don't care.